When you live alone long enough, you start paying attention to things you never noticed before. Not because you want to, because there's no one else to confirm they're normal. I moved into that apartment after a breakup. Nothing dramatic. I just needed a place that was quiet, affordable, and close enough to work that I wouldn't have to think too much. It was on the third floor of an old building. Concrete walls, narrow hallways, thin doors. The kind of place where every sound travels, but you stop noticing it once it becomes routine. At first, living alone felt exactly like people say it does. Peaceful, controlled, predictable. I decided when the lights went off. I decided when doors were locked. I knew where everything was because I was the only one touching anything. That sense of control is what made the first thing feel off. It wasn't a noise, not at first. It was the absence of one. Every night, around the same time, the building settled. Pipes clicked. Someone upstairs dragged a chair. A distant door slammed on the ground floor. It happened so consistently that my body learned it without thinking. I'd be half asleep, waiting for the sounds like punctuation at the end of the day. Then one night they didn't come. I lay in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, waiting. My phone said 1:47 a.m. The air felt heavier, not in a dramatic way, just still. Like the building was holding its breath. I told myself it meant nothing. Buildings change, people go on vacation, pipes cool differently depending on the weather. Still, I didn't sleep easily that night. After that, small things started standing out. Not because they were alarming, but because they were inconsistent. The bathroom door wasn't fully closed when I woke up. I always closed it. The hinge made a soft scrape against the tile, and I hated hearing it in the morning. But there it was, open just enough to see the light switch on the wall. I stood there longer than I needed to, replaying the night in my head. I tried to remember if I'd gone to the bathroom half asleep, tried to picture myself forgetting to close the door. I couldn't. So I shrugged it off. People forget things. That's what living alone teaches you. How often your memory fills in gaps without permission. A few nights later, I noticed the chair in the living room wasn't pushed under the table the way I usually left it. It was angled slightly, one leg turned outward. That one bothered me more than it should have. Not because it meant something moved it, but because I remembered pushing it in. I stood in the doorway, keys still in my hand, staring at that chair. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I didn't feel scared, just unsettled. Like realizing you've skipped a step in a routine you've followed for years. I pushed the chair back in place and went about my night. From then on, I started paying attention, not obsessively, not yet. Just enough to reassure myself that things were where I left them. Shoes by the door, sink empty, windows locked, bedroom door closed, everything normal, until it wasn't. One night I woke up because my arm was cold. That sounds minor, but it's what pulled me out of sleep. The blanket had slipped off, exposing my forearm to the air. I reached to pull it back and felt something I didn't expect. The edge of the mattress. The blanket wasn't just off me, it was folded back, not neatly, not intentionally. Just enough that it couldn't have happened from tossing and turning alone. I sat up slowly, heart rate increasing for no clear reason. The room was dark, lit only by the faint orange glow from the streetlight outside. I looked down at the blanket, then around the room. Nothing else looked disturbed. I stayed awake for the rest of the night. After that, sleep became lighter. Not anxious, just alert, like part of my brain refused to fully shut down anymore. I started waking up at small sounds, the building creaking, a car passing outside, footsteps in the hallway. The footsteps were common. People came and went at all hours. But once I started noticing them, I noticed patterns. Most footsteps passed my door. Some paused briefly, keys jingling as someone fumbled with their lock. Then the door would open or they'd move on. One night, The footsteps stopped right outside my door. I watched the light under the door, waiting for it to shift as someone turned away. It didn't. I could hear breathing, not loud, just enough to register. I held my breath without realizing it, listening harder than I ever had before. Seconds stretched. My phone was face down on the nightstand, but I didn't dare move to check the time. Then the breathing stopped. Footsteps retreated down the hall. The next morning, I told myself it was someone checking the apartment number. Maybe a drunk neighbor. Maybe someone on the wrong floor. Still, I checked the lock twice before leaving. After that, the apartment felt different during the day too. Not hostile, just less familiar. Like a place you've lived in for years suddenly looks like a rental again. I started doing things I never used to do, taking photos of rooms before bed. Not to document anything specific, just to reassure myself later. Lining objects up more carefully, leaving a glass of water in a specific spot to see if it moved. Nothing ever did. That was the worst part, because every time something felt wrong, there was no proof afterward. No clear sign, just a vague sense that something had happened and erased itself. One evening, I came home later than usual. The hallway lights flickered like they always did, casting long shadows against the walls. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Not bad, just different, like the apartment had been closed too long. I stood there with the door open behind me, listening. The refrigerator hummed, the building creaked, everything sounded normal. I closed the door and locked it. That's when I noticed the bedroom light switch was on. I don't leave lights on when I go out, ever. I stood in the living room, keys still in my hand, staring down the dark hallway. The light spilled from under the bedroom door, steady and warm. I didn't call out. I didn't move. I just stood there, listening to the sound of my own breathing, trying to decide which possibility scared me more, that I had forgotten or that I hadn't. I didn't go into the bedroom right away. I wish I could say I grabbed something to defend myself or checked the apartment methodically like you're supposed to. I didn't. I just stood there, staring at the line of light under the door, listening for something that would justify my fear. There was nothing. No movement, no sound, just the quiet hum of electricity and the distant noise of traffic outside. Eventually, I told myself the simplest explanation was the right one. Maybe I had turned the light on earlier and forgotten. Maybe muscle memory failed me. Maybe I was letting a few restless nights rewrite my confidence. I walked down the hallway slowly, every step deliberate. The bedroom door was unlocked. I pushed it open with 2 fingers. The room looked normal. Bed untouched, closet door closed, no signs of anything out of place. I turned the light off and stood there in the dark for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. Nothing changed. That night, I slept with the bedroom door locked. It didn't make me feel safer, just more aware. From that point on, I became careful in ways I never had before. I stopped assuming anything. I checked locks every time I came home. I paid attention to reflections in mirrors. I listened before opening doors. Living alone teaches you how loud silence can be. Days passed without incident, and slowly my guard lowered. That's how it always happens. You convince yourself that fear needs reinforcement to survive, and when it doesn't get it, it fades. Then one afternoon, I came home to find the trash can in the kitchen turned slightly. Not tipped over, not moved far, just rotated. It was the kind of thing you'd never notice if you lived with someone else. You'd assume they touched it. You'd move on. I didn't. I stood in the doorway, grocery bags cutting into my fingers, staring at that trash can. I remembered pushing it back under the counter that morning, remembered the faint scrape it made against the tile. I put the groceries down without taking my eyes off it. I checked the windows, locked. I checked the front door, locked. No sign of forced entry, no damage, nothing missing. That night I installed a camera, not hidden, not elaborate, just a small one, plugged into the outlet in the living room, angled toward the front door and part of the hallway. I told myself it was for peace of mind, not suspicion. I didn't tell anyone about it. The first few nights, the footage was exactly what you'd expect. Me coming home, me leaving, nothing else. I watched it back anyway, frame by frame, looking for movement in shadows, changes in light. There was nothing. Then, one night, I woke up with the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Not panic, not fear, just awareness. I lay still, staring into the darkness, listening. The air felt different again, thicker, quieter. I waited for my eyes to adjust, for something to resolve into shape. Nothing did. In the morning, I checked the camera. The footage showed me sleeping, rolling over once, pulling the blanket up. At around 3:12 a.m., I sat up slightly like I was waking from a dream. Then I froze. I stayed that way for almost a full minute. I didn't remember that. I watched myself on the screen, unmoving, head tilted just enough that it looked like I was listening. Then slowly, I lay back down. No one entered the apartment. Nothing moved. No explanation offered itself. That was the moment something shifted in me. Because the disturbing part wasn't that something was happening. It was that my body was reacting to something my memory refused to keep. After that, I started noticing changes that couldn't be tracked on camera, smells that faded before I could place them, a faint warmth in rooms I hadn't entered yet, the sense that something had been touched recently, even when nothing appeared different. I stopped inviting people over, not because I was afraid they'd see something, but because I was afraid they wouldn't. I started staying up later, testing the night instead of letting it happen to me. I sat in the living room with the lights off, listening to the building breathe. I learned the exact sound of every neighbor's routine. Who came home late, who left early. One pattern didn't fit. Someone was walking the hallway after midnight without keys, no jingling, no doors opening, just slow, measured steps. They passed my door every time. One night, I opened the door immediately after the footsteps passed. The hallway was empty. The lights buzzed softly overhead. The stairwell door at the end of the hall was closed. No sound of retreat, no echo of movement. I stood there longer than I should have, staring down both ends of the corridor, waiting to feel foolish. I didn't. The next morning I checked the camera footage again. At 12:58 a.m., a shadow passed under my door. Subtle, narrow, gone in seconds. No one appeared on camera. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. The camera couldn't see the hallway outside my door. It only showed what entered. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. I moved to the couch, positioning myself so I could see the front door without turning my head. I left the lights off, telling myself it was temporary. One night, sometime before dawn, I heard the sound I'd been dreading. A soft click, not a door opening, not a lock turning. The sound of something being tested. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stared at the door, waiting for the handle to shift. It didn't. The sound came again, quieter this time, then nothing. In the morning, the door was locked. No marks, no signs of tampering. I called the building manager that afternoon. He listened politely as I explained. His expression didn't change. He didn't dismiss me outright, which somehow made it worse. He told me the building used to be a single-unit residence decades ago, converted later. Some internal doors had been sealed, not removed. I asked him where. He hesitated. Then he pointed to my unit on the floor plan. There was a thin rectangle behind my bedroom wall, too small to be a room, too large to be nothing. Old service access, he said, shouldn't be usable. That night, I pressed my ear against the bedroom wall. I didn't hear voices. I didn't hear movement. But the wall was warmer than it should have been. I moved out 2 weeks later. No dramatic ending, no confrontation, no answers. The final night, as I packed the last box, I noticed something I hadn't before. A faint outline in the paint near the closet, a rectangle, the size of a door. Painted over so many times it had almost disappeared. Almost. Living alone doesn't make things happen, it just removes the witnesses.